Ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen has done it again. Just today, in a chess tournament he played on chess.com, he put up a legendary performance of 10.5 points out of 11, winning the first 10 games that he played, including against a multitude of 3,000 plus rated grandmasters on chess.com, but specifically highlighting two of the at the end of this list, Alireza Firouzja, who is over 3,300, and Hans Niemann. You call him a rival, you call him a villain, you call him a foe, whatever you want to call him in Magnus Carlsen's career. Hans beat him last week to win the tournament. This week, Magnus gets it back. I'm going to be showing you 3 of these epic games, 10 in a row, unbelievable performance. And every time Magnus, we want to take a break from Magnus, he does something again, so we've got to cover it. Now, really quickly before we get into the games, I want to give you a little update about Chessly, which is my educational platform. Some of you have used it already, and I want to thank you for that. Some of you have not. Over this next week, I'm adding new courses, Ruy Lopez and King's Indian Defense specifically, hopefully. And also, we are running a little experiment. So if you've never actually tried the platform, I highly recommend you do, because this is what we are testing. A new way to learn openings. Less video, less quizzes, more of a path-based learning. And every time you get into a specific part of an opening course, you will have this interactive system where you will learn the variations, and then you will review them, and then you will practice, and then you will get XP, and so on and so forth. This system, if successful, we will implement for all users probably within a couple of weeks. I'll put a link in the description. This is a very fun and addicting way to learn your openings. I've actually been doing it. As you can see, I have a 5-day streak on Chessly, all right? So stay tuned. New stuff is coming on Chessly. End of this week, new courses, and also we will have we'll have this experiment running. Try it out, make an account. It's free. You can do the free trial. You don't have to pay for anything, and it will be available for people who have new accounts. You might get put into the control group, and for that, I apologize. You might not have access, but we're running a test. All right. Yapping is out of the way. Somebody will timestamp it like 2:20 when the yapping ends. Let's talk about the games. So I have 3 Magnus Carlsen games for you. Here we go. E4. Jeffrey Zhang, strong grandmaster. Magnus played the Sicilian defense in this game. Jeffrey played knight f3, d6, and knight c3. Knight c3, instead of putting the second pawn in the center, going for a trade, is trying to get black to commit something. Black can play e5, closing the center completely, but obviously having 3 pawns on dark squares is not so nice for the pawn structure. Magnus doesn't do anything about that. He plays knight f6, and here Jeffrey, instead of taking with the knight, he takes with the queen, which is a provocative move. You want black to attack it with knight to c6, and that's exactly what Magnus does. And now we have this. Now, what's funny is that this Sicilian with queen d4, queen d3, I actually play myself. In fact, one of my major inspirations for playing queen d4 and queen d3 in the Sicilian defense is Jeffrey himself. And the line here for white goes knight to d5, pawn to c3, bishop to g5, etc., which is really funny because that is exactly what Jeffrey played in this game. So a Sicilian variation that I have played myself, just trying to take my opponents out of a comfort zone, I should say, taught to me by the games of Jeffrey Zhang, is now being played against the final boss. How do your openings work if you are taking on the final boss? So bishop to e6, bishop e2. Now Magnus decides, what do I do? This is the hardest part of a chess game. You ever develop all your pieces and follow all the rules that you learned in my YouTube videos and then go, I don't know what the next move is. I just shouldn't blunder anything. Well, Magnus goes knight e5, initiating a trade of knights. And when this trade of knights happens, a few things happen. The queen opens up against the knight. The bishop is blocked in, but it'll have a different future. Maybe you're going to use the c file for your rook. We have knight takes, pawn takes. And Jeffrey trades the knight here and then trades the queen and then goes back to e3. Now, again, watching Magnus Carlsen beat lesser grandmasters, people who have the same title, because grandmaster just so happens to be the highest title in chess, right? But grandmasters that don't have the experience, the skill level, the stamina, the looks, right? The marital status, like, I don't know. Let's see how Magnus does it. f5. We use our doubled pawn. We are obviously threatening to take the pawn, or we are threatening to push. Jeffrey takes. Magnus takes with the bishop. So we have a totally equal and symmetrical position. How will Magnus win this? First, we attack a pawn. We make white decide how he's going to defend it. Is he going to push it? What's he going to do? He castles. He castles. If you take on a2, I have very quick counterplay down the a file, so I'm not particularly concerned about that. Not to mention rook takes as well as bishop a7. Magnus plays f5. Jeffrey plays g3. Just a very normal move. King has breathing room. Magnus plays king f7. In the middle of this game, he doesn't touch the bishops. He doesn't touch the rooks. A lot of players here would not play king f7. A lot of players. They would make an antsy move. King f7 just... King is a piece in the endgame. We got to bring the king. a4. Start looking at that move. You're like, all right, well, Jeffrey maybe wants to come down here. You start thinking 2. He has 3. Simplify down. He gets a 1. That 1 is going to walk down. So maybe I get rid of it. I'm going to plant my bishop there, immediately taking advantage of my opponent's previous move. Now we have only 3 pieces to play with, and the pawn goes up to a5, and Magnus stops it with a6. So now Magnus controls the only open file. The rook cannot go to d1. That isn't enough of an advantage to be annoying, and after rook a1, now this very nice move bishop f8, which prevents the rook from removing the bishop. Jeffrey plays king f1. Magnus brings the king closer to the middle. Every move is an improvement. The king has now walked closer to the center than white's king. Black has more space. Black has the more annoying bishops and the more annoying rook. King e1. Rook d5. We begin creating an illusion that we might create some threats. And now, this move f4 completely clarifies the pawn structure, and Magnus advances. Why does he advance? Connect 4, 1, pass pawn. In all endgames, that pass pawn will be annoying. Pass pawn meaning it has no pawns preventing it from going. It's certainly not passing anywhere, all right? It's blocked up like Costco on a Saturday. E4, purely American experience, by the way. Do they have Costco in, like, Canada? I don't know. I think there's Costco in Mexico, too, actually. Or maybe it's Walmart. I don't know. Bishop to d4, king to d7, king f2. And it looks like Jeffrey has actually made a lot of progress, completely closing up the position. Now we have bishop c5. Jeffrey goes on the offensive here. He completely reverses course. He's not trying to push Magnus back. With pawn takes g4, bishop takes, pawn takes, rooks and bishops. Magnus down 40 seconds on the clock to his younger opponent, king d6, rook c8, brings the bishop back. But both guys only have 5 pawns. And what's funny is that Magnus's pawns are technically on the wrong color. They should not be on the same color as the bishop. But actually, in this instance, the pawns are very well protected. Jeffrey is doing great. A lot of pressure being put on the position. He plays bishop back to e2. Magnus rook b2. They're shuffling. Now he goes for his a-pawn. Jeffrey gives away the a-pawn, but wins this pawn. Now it's only down to 3 pawns. 30 seconds each. It's a scramble. What's going to happen here? Rook d3, rook c3. We're looking for our chances. We get that pawn for that pawn. 2 pawns remaining on the board. A scramble incoming. Will Magnus be clutch? King f6, d6, h2. Both guys are so close to making a new queen. Bishop e6. Only thing that can possibly happen here is a blunder deep into the game. g5 is tricky. Both guys are now down to 1 pawn. If you sack a bishop for a pawn, it's going to end in a draw. King to f4. Bishop f5. How is Magnus going to win this position? King d6. Oh, that's a really clutch move. It's a really clutch find. He gives up his bishop for a bishop, and it would have been a winning rook endgame. And Jeffrey Zhang here loses on time after playing a very, 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 very close game. Very close. 60 moves he was keeping even. At the end, Magnus was pulling away. That's your appetizer. Now you're going to get your main course and you're going to get your dessert. For the main course, we have a matchup between a 33-27 and a 33-26. These are alien ratings. Some of you are 327. Remove the whole first number, okay? Some of you play chess like you're a 27, all right? Not even, remove both 3s. And then we have dessert, Magnus versus Hans. Here we go. Magnus opens up with the English opening. Buckle up. Firouzja is one of the best chess players in the world. And I call him the Prince of Chess, because Magnus deemed him to be, the next challenger. We have a King's Indian defense with e5. One of the purest forms of unarmed combat in chess that you could get into. This is the highest level kickboxing, mixed martial arts opening, whatever you want to say. This is it. All right, e4. Ali Reza takes. There are a million setups. There's a million places you can put the knight and the pawns like this, like this, like this, like this. The rook comes here, etc. Rook e8, targeting white center. h3. Ideas of king h2 in the future, and also just protecting the g4 square against anything. Knight to c5, rook e1. Firouzja also being patient. Queen c2. It doesn't take long for this game to get crazy. Firouzja jumps the knight to g4. If you take it, the black bishop takes the knight in the center, repositions the knight. We have takes, and rook d1. Now, the computer really likes white's position. Why does it like white's position? Bishop e3, b6, and Magnus has the opportunity to play the move f4 and get an initiative, but he prefers to do it this way. Knight d5. Knight leaves the center. Now he plays queen d2. Targeting this, all right? Knight into d4. Firouzja has almost the perfect King's Indian position. All the pieces on all the right squares, gives away the pawn on h6, but smashes back the pawn on h3. Oh my goodness. If you take this, knight to f3, Firouzja right there with Magnus. Bishop comes back, targeting the queen slides forward by 1 square. But it's bad news. That move is a blunder. Instead of that, Firouzja needed to move the queen to d6. What's funny is, that might have been a mouse slip. I actually don't even know. I think he played queen d7 because he thought it was a logical move. He was defending his bishop, and the queen could potentially go in afterward. But white wants to play knight f6. White wants to play knight f6, and then trade, and play queen h6, and deliver this mate, which queen d6 might have been, I don't know, it was maybe a split-second decision. Magnus plays knight f6 check, and now we see the problem. After this trade, this just looks like it's fatal. There is simply no saving the dark squares. Queen c6 from Firouzja. But now, bishop d4. By the way, this bishop is still hanging, so if black takes the bishop takes the bishop. So black has to go here. Now if white took here, maybe this is just what Firouzja quickly calculated, it's good, but this is the problem. Magnus steps back, and the king in the right side of the board is butt naked. Just completely, there is nothing, absolutely nothing you can do against this attack. Bishop e4, queen h6. It looks like for a brief moment, you have temporarily made it out. But now Magnus uncorks the real idea. It looks like you don't have anything. You can't take, you're blocked in. Now, whether Magnus saw this in advance, or he is just instinctively getting to positions where he has opportunities, we will never know. But after spending a few seconds, he plays the move f3. And I think it was here Firouzja realized, I screwed up. I think when Firouzja played queen d7, he had calculated knight f6 takes, and this move. And he probably calculated bishop d4, bishop g2, bishop c3, bishop e4, queen h6, f6. He probably saw all of this. But this is the move. Now you can no longer defend this. If you play bishop f5, I'm looking at g4, but actually the real point there might be king f2. King f2, defending my pawn with rook h1 incoming. This is nasty business. This is nasty business. If queen e6 looking for queen e2, then g4, queen e2, and the king goes, I mean, this is... Magnus seeing this stuff is alien behavior. Alien behavior. King f2, rook h1. Because if you go g4, there's this, and it's a draw. Unbelievable stuff. So rook d5 is the move that he chooses, though. King f2 good, rook d5 also good. Rook f5 ideas, rook here. Sacrifices the rook, a man after my own heart and content, and bishop takes f6. The rook is hanging, not quite though, but if queen g5 check, and there are all sorts of checkmating ideas. Queen d6, queen g5, and very simple, bishop takes. Why very simple? Because if the queen takes, you give a check, your rook comes to help, and you win the game. Magnus Carlsen carves up the position against 33-27 rated Alireza Firouzja. You have only a couple of moves here. They both lose everything, and Magnus gets the win. This was so crazy. From queen d7, you needed to see some 12 moves ahead. All right, knight f6 takes. Then you needed to see this. Then you needed to see this. Then you needed to see this. And then the cherry on top, f3, removing the bishop from the control of the position. And you have multiple ideas like bringing in this, like sacrificing the rook for the bishop. And he pulls it off, absolute madman. And in case you forgot, we are only 15 minutes into this video. By the way, seriously, do check out Chessly if you haven't already. Be a part of the opening experiment. Let us know how you study your openings. Here we go. The game we have all waited for, the game we have all wanted. Last week, Hans Niemann pulled it off against Magnus. This time, Hans has white again. He has white again. Last time we looked at the game from Hans's perspective because he got the win. Last time, by the way, they played in Italian. This is Hans Niemann's bread and butter. But in that game, Magnus put the bishop on e7. He played a little bit passively. And the opening that Hans chose was this position with a knight on c3 and a queen on e2, and then he castled long. Or was it queen on d2? Doesn't matter. Knight c3, but he castled long in an Italian, which is weird. This time, though, we both go short side. Hans plays h3, d6. c3, a6. This position is actually something Hans plays a lot with both colors. Nowadays, if you want to be a serious chess player, you want to be a player at the elite level, you gotta play this type of Italian. Gotta play the Italian with white and with black. I'm not a top player. I play stupid openings like the Carlsen and the Scandinavian and the Modern and the Budapest Gambit and so on. No, I don't. Not in serious. Well, Carlsen, yes. Anyway, a4. And I'm joking. Carlsen's a great opening. Bishop to a7. And there are multiple ideas in this opening. Hans Niemann is just playing the pawn, whatever this is. All right, this is like, to quote Yu-Gi-Oh, Harpy Lady Phoenix formation. Do you remember that? That was crazy when the Harpies like all pulled up. That was the Atlantis saga with the Seal of Ori calculus. Yo, my childhood right there. You know, sometimes I just boot up old Yu-Gi-Oh episodes, sit here and just watch like Battle City. You know, Siegfried Lloyd and the Valkyries. Oh my goodness, I'm getting nostalgic. Bishop d3. Not that you care. And Pokemon was, see, Yu-Gi-Oh was something that I watched but didn't play many video games of. Pokemon video games you played all the time, but then you wouldn't really watch. Anyway, rook e8, knight d2. Doesn't matter. Bishop c2. This is very much like a feel out. They're not actually touching each other. They're not into that, as far as I know. But you see, all the pieces are on the board. Nobody's traded anything. Both guys have made 14 moves. Nothing has been traded. Knight is repositioning. a5. They have a lot of opportunities to trade pieces. Nobody wants to make the first break, but now we have it. Now is your moment, because the queen has to come out, and with the queen out, there is an opportunity here to go kind of after it. Hans puts this pawn up for grabs completely. Evidently here, there is something that Magnus didn't like, because, you know, he obviously saw this. He didn't play it. There might have been some attacking ideas, like Hans very quickly can generate an attack out of nowhere. And so instead of taking this, Magnus plays bishop to e6, trying to kind of withhold him. And now Hans plays bishop d2. Again, by the way, from the opening, Hans has a very, very pleasant Italian. He has gotten a lot of very nice Italian games against Magnus, putting some pressure on him here. You know, the knight is coming to f5. This is the $1 million idea in Italians and Spanishes when you target black's position. Okay, queen c7 back, and rook b1. Now, the move here that the computer really wants is queen c1, which is joining forces with the bishop with various sacrificial ideas on these two squares. We have rook a d8, and there's queen c1, and here's king h7. The advantage is bubbling. It really is. Now Hans plays bishop e3, which has another kind of, you know, general improving idea to maybe put the queen on the d2 square and then do something with these pawns, just join forces, rotate. Right. Also, there's a hanging bishop. So there's going to be positions where you can take on e5 maybe, and there's going to be some tactical ideas, or d5 with tactical ideas. So now we have Magnus redefending his rook. It feels like the progress in the position is being made by Hans. We have rook d8 back. Is this a draw offer? If Hans plays queen c1, which he does, is this a draw offer? Rook to a8. Or are we playing a little bit of possum here? Hans is the one who denies the repetition. He denies the repetition. He thinks he's better. Rook e7. Magnus just playing along the last three ranks of the board. Rook d1, queen a5. Hans queen a3. It's Hans's position to improve. Bishop d2. Is he gonna put the foot on the gas? Is he gonna attack Magnus again? Bishop to e3, queen a5. We have another threat of repetition. Magnus is playing mind games out here. He's saying, you have a better position, do something about it. Hans is like, I have a feeling I have a better position, but maybe I can make a draw. Now rook c1. Now we have king g8. This is gamesmanship at its finest. Queen c7, queen a5, queen c7, queen a5, rook a8, rook d8, rook a8, rook d8, king h7, king g8. By the way, this is hanging. It's just the free pawn. Hans grabs it. The crazy thing about this position is the unbelievable c5 shuts the door on the queen. If dc5 in that position, there are various ways to trap the queen, like I think rook d7. c5 and the queen is stuck in with the hand in the cookie jar. Instead, Magnus takes on c3. That's probably what he had prepared. The queen can't take because of this. Now Hans plays d5. Now rook d7. I think Hans is sacrificing his queen. Bishop a7, rook d6, e6. So Hans picks up a bishop, a rook, and a pawn. If you add those up, it's 9. Even with my American level of mathematics, I can sum that up. 5, 3, 1. 9. Yeah, pretty sure. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, perfect. Knight e5. Just have to triple check. Knight to d4. Queen back to a5. Hans grabs the bishop. This bishop is also gone. Now we have knight c7. But that was an incorrect sequence of events. Instead of this, after knight to e5, Hans should have kept the bishop. He should have preserved his bishop. When he played this move, he blocked in his bishop, and the secret to playing against a queen is to have the proper pieces in your arsenal to coordinate and put up a fight. When you lose a certain piece in this position, when you go down the bishop pair, because black now dominates the dark squares, it's going to be very easy for him to control the pieces. This bishop is poor quality. This knight is stuck. This knight can't really go forward. And now Magnus shows the levels. Queen to e3 was possible. He goes back to d7. Rook c3. Queen takes a pawn. Hans has 11 seconds on the clock to play this scramble. It's not easy to play the scramble. The threats are always coming. Knight e4. There's mate on f2, and the rook is hanging. Rook f3. He saves it with 9 seconds. Now we have queen a2, hitting the bishop while Magnus's knight is hanging. The knight goes to d4. But suddenly, Hans Niemann back in the game. It's game on. Putting this man away is not easy. Magnus sacrifices a knight. Now, will Hans here find the only move in the position, bishop to b3? Alien level stuff. No, he takes the knight. Rook d6, and now a lot of stuff is hanging for white. The knight is hanging, the bishop is hanging, and if you go bishop b3 now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're cheering for, this knight will perish. The knight can go to a8, which is kind of hilarious. It will get trapped. Or queen a5. Knight c6, rook c6. The king escapes. Rook c1 is a nasty move. Nasty move. Prying apart the defenses. Queen to d8. And Hans Niemann, although he put up a really good fight, goes down. And Magnus won 10 games in a row. Repeating the feat, which Hans himself did last week. So it was Hans putting up 10.5 out of 11. Then it was Magnus putting up 10.5 out of 11. Winning against absolute monsters, putting on classy performances, 10 games, but he got it done in the end, winning against, I think, 6 GMs, and also like 7 people rated above 3,000 on chess.com. Like I said, you know, I want to take breaks from Magnus content, but what can I do when this man is putting up these performances? And as I already said in the intro, I'm very excited about this new path-based system. We are running an experiment. It ain't perfect, but if you make an account and you land in the experiment group, we would love for you to just get to work on this, learning, reviewing the variation. We did this in the beginning of the video. We were learning about this, right? And I was showing this stuff. I already actually forgot it. I think this was the move, and then you take, and then you take, and then you castle or play d3. Boom. And then it tells you perfect drill. You gain XP in the bottom left-hand side of your screen. You just can't see it. It's cut off. And then you keep going and you keep learning, and then you progress along your path. So exciting stuff is coming on Chessly for existing users. New courses dropping. Rui Lopez hoping for the King's Indian as well at the end of this week. New users, get on that experiment. Keep at it. Appreciate you all as always, and get out of here.